it is time we can be able to start our session. A good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening to all of you, wherever you are. This is an online session which is joined by a number of people from different parts of the world. This session is on AI policy and practice across higher education institutions. And the session chair is none other than myself, the one who is speaking to you now. My name is Paul Muinda. I am a professor of open distance and e-learning at Makerere University, and also the director of the Institute of Open Distance and E-Learning. I am one of the coordinators of this session. At a later stage, I will invite my other two coordinators, that is Professor Robert Wamala and Professor Julius Chikoma, to be able to come in and say some few words. But I want to just give a brief introduction about this session so that then we can put it in context and all of us can therefore be able to know what we are expecting in the session. Now, you realize that artificial intelligence caught many higher education institutions off guard, especially in our developing context. Many of us actually didn't anticipate that artificial intelligence would come and be able to change many things. So for many, artificial intelligence has emerged as a disruption to established norms. And consequently, there have been mixed reactions among institutions and individuals. And these have had mixed reactions on the impact of artificial intelligence and the usage or the utilization of artificial intelligence. Some higher education institutions and even individuals have viewed artificial intelligence as a computer virus or as a digital virus that must be identified, detected, and eliminated. Others have seen it as a gateway to limitless learning resources. Some fear it will replace their professional roles, while others embrace it to enhance learning outcomes and efficiency. AI is here to stay and will become increasingly embedded in our daily academic and personal lives. Dear participants, therefore, in this session, you will join me to welcome Dr. Kevin Martin, the Director of Innovation at Cambridge's Digital Education Future Initiative, as he explores how AI is reshaping higher education institutions, not by replacing us as human beings who are working there, but by helping us to rethink or to think better. But before I bring in Martin to be able to start engaging us on this session or on this discussion, I want to inform you that this session has been coordinated by, as I alluded to earlier, three professors at Makerere University. The first professor is Professor Robert Wamala, who is the Director, Innovations, Development and Partnership at Makerere University. The second one is Professor Julius Chikoma, the Director, Graduate Training at Makerere University, and then myself, the Director of the Institute of Open Distance and E-Learning. But this has been in partnership with Astria Learning in collaboration with the University of Cambridge. So I just want, before I bring in Martin to be able to engage us on this session, in this session, I want to ask Dr. Robert Wamala to just, in 2 minutes, say a few words, and then also I'll invite Julius also in 2 minutes to just say a few words about this session. So, Robert, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Paul Muinda. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Allow me to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all participants joining us from different parts of the world. On behalf of Makerere University, Director of Research, Innovation and Partnerships, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this important session on AI policy and practice across higher education institutions. Like you've said, actually, artificial intelligence is transforming every sphere of knowledge and practice. And universities, I mean, for this particular matter, have a critical role to play, not only as just users of AI, but also shapers of its policies, ethics, and society impact. And therefore, this session provides a valuable platform for us to share experiences, learn from each other, and reflect on higher education, how it can basically be able to harness AI responsibly and strategically to enhance research, teaching, and innovation. Of course, I wish to thank Dr. Kevin Martin for allowing to facilitate this particular session and about, I mean, being able to put all this together. And I mean, all the participants have been able to log in and be able to listen into and engage on this particular exercise. I encourage you all to interact actively, share perspectives, and together we build a roadmap for interacting AI into higher education systems that are both innovative and human-centered. Once again, thank you for joining and wish you a fruitful and inspiring session. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Robert. And so we also join Julius to give us in 2 minutes or less some remarks before we can be able to invite Martin. Over to you, Julius.
Chair, I think Julius has not yet joined.
Okay, if Julius has not yet joined, then that saves us a little bit of time. We can then be able to get on to Martin. Martin, you are free to give some more details about yourself, because what I gave is what I could be able to see on the poster. But if you feel like you want to give us more about yourself, please, it is time for you. You have the time to do that. And our session is going to run from 11, or it has already started running from 11 up to 1. So we really have enough time to engage with each other on this matter. So Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the invitation to talk to all of you. Today, I have been really excited to share some of the work that my center, the Digital Education Futures Initiative, or DEFI, has been doing in this space. And Paul, you had mentioned that there's this tension between viewing AI as a virus or an opportunity. And that is the question that my center has been trying to tackle over the past 3 years as we look at both the risk presented by AI and the opportunities. So in today's session, we will explore what we view the future of higher education is shaping to be in light of the disruption caused by AI. And while I will give to you a number of observations and ways that we anticipate AI is shaping higher education, a lot of what I will share today will be a series of questions, because we're all trying to navigate this together. We all have much to learn from each other. I certainly don't have all of the answers. And as we further explore this space, indeed, what we do come up with are more and more questions about how we should think of new emergent technologies like artificial intelligence and what their impact will be on education. As you mentioned, we have a long session today. That I understand that listening to me talk for the next 2 hours could get rather boring for you. So I urge all of you to ask questions if and when you have them. There is the question feature enabled for this Zoom session. You should find it at the bottom of the marquee on your screen. So while I'm talking, if you do have a question that you would like to ask, please enter it into the question box or into the chat box. I have both open on my computer screen, and I will answer those questions in real time as they come in. And in that way, we can develop more of a dialogue instead of you having to listen to me for the next 2 hours. So I'll take a few minutes to tell you more about my background and why I was very excited to receive this invitation. I have been working in Sub-Saharan Africa for nearly the last 25 years, starting in HIV/AIDS education in rural Tanzania throughout the first decade of the 2000s. Since then, I have gone to work in social enterprise, again in Sub-Saharan Africa, where I worked for the impact investor Acumen and supported investment projects across the region. One, Delight Design, some of you may be familiar with. It is one of the largest point-of-view solar programs active across Sub-Saharan Africa and southern India. I've also spent time as a professor of business administration and social enterprise at New England College, where I also served as the dean of the business school for 5 years. For the last 8 years, I have been based in Cambridge at the University of Cambridge, where I moved to pursue my PhD, where I studied the impact of technology and education in extreme rural areas, where my research primarily focused on working with subsistence farmers across Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. In that capacity, I have spent time building and deploying education tools that work in low resource environments. And I work in conjunction with a tree planting and agriculture program called TIST, where we have now developed a suite of mobile education tools that work in rural sub-Saharan Africa. These are offline tools that use AI to support informal learning. My work with the Digital Education Futures Initiative at Cambridge, there I have been also working to pioneer anticipatory thinking methods for education. And I will talk more about that today. And in that capacity, my colleagues and I at Cambridge have been working with organizations like UNESCO and the OECD to help navigate the uncertainties caused by emergent technologies in education. My talk today will span a number of areas. I will give you a brief overview of the work that my colleagues and I are doing at Cambridge. Then we will review some of the shifting attitudes that we have observed on AI and higher education. We'll then take a bit of time to review some policies that are emerging across higher education and pose to you some questions that will help your own institutions navigate the future of higher education that is mediated by AI. Then we will look at 2 key areas that have been most disrupted by AI in higher education. That will be assessment, and then looking at specific digital pedagogies and new opportunities that we see AI are creating for higher education. So my center, what we call DEFI, is a global research and development hub based at Hughes Hall, which is one of the constituent colleges of the University of Cambridge. We are a translational research center. That means that we don't just focus on theory development. We also looked at practical applications of the research that we develop. In that capacity, we work to understand how emergent technologies are impacting the future of teaching and learning. And then we make those insights available to education decision makers and teachers globally to support their decision making and how they approach emergent technology in education. We also spend a lot of our time focused on pioneering new education models. We're very interested in helping to support emergent or new enterprises that are trying to shape the future of education. So we actively develop new technologies and their applications in the classroom, and then reflect on the impact that they are having and make those insights available. But the work in DEFI is grounded on a few core tenets. The first is that we believe digital technology is ubiquitous, not just in education, but in our daily lives. But too often we use technology in a way that is not best supporting education. Often technology is deployed in order to create more efficiencies. So this might be for teacher administration, or we hear a lot about personalized tutors. And while those are useful, we believe it's a missed opportunity, that these new technologies offer unprecedented possibilities for greater collaboration and dialogue-based learning. So the work that we do and the research that we conduct is specifically focused on how these technologies best sort dialogue, collaboration, collective intelligence, or critical thinking. We also think that learning based on dialogue supports greater empathy, inclusion, and intellectual humility. And dialogue has long been a core foundation of education across all cultures globally for thousands of years. But we are concerned about a shift we see towards more monologic-based education and these personalized systems. And we are advocating for a return to these dialogue-based principles as a way to greater support, greater empathy, inclusion, and intellectual humility in education. We also think that it is key for us to work together. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have all of the answers. So taking that in mind, DEFI creates a space for global stakeholders to come together and share. And at the end of my presentation, I will have a QR code for you to join DEFI's mailing list, but we offer a number of ongoing opportunities, either for face-to-face programs where we can come together and in a workshop setting share, or through online programs where we work to create a global conversation around these issues so that we can best learn from one another. DEFI works across 4 key education stakeholders. So we aim to bring together academia, so researchers, professors, administrators like yourselves, alongside policymakers, entrepreneurs, and teacher practitioners. And we think that in bringing together these different stakeholders, we create a new field of possibilities where the creative dialogue that we can engage in helps us to create these new models of education and enable new ways of looking at technology in education. That is some comments on our founding principles. I will show you now some recent resources that we have developed that you might find of interest. And some of these are things that I will reference throughout this presentation, but I urge you to go to our website where you will be able to learn more and gather more resources. One of our key research methodologies is horizon scanning, or what you might have also heard as futures thinking or anticipatory thinking. This is a research methodology that was originally developed for industries such as energy or defense, but working with our partner, Dr. Fawaz Abusita, the UNESCO chair in anticipatory thinking, we have developed this methodology for looking at education. And it's a series of structured ways of understanding and looking at all the variables that are shaping education and tackling a key question that allows us to anticipate future trends and the way that education might be shaping so that we can incorporate that into our decision making. I have here a copy of a report that we did in partnership with Cambridge University Press and Assessment, where we used this methodology to look at the future or futures of assessment. And I use the plural for future very intentionally, because this is a process of mapping out a number of potential futures and then using the methodology to work backwards to understand key decision points that we need to make as educationalists in order to realize our preferred future. And I will be referencing this report more, but you can access it on our website through the QR code here. In addition to this as a research methodology, we have also developed it into an open access course with the Cambridge Institute for Continuing Education. Here you can see an image of my colleague, Dr. Abusita, the UNESCO chair in anticipatory thinking. And working together, we have developed this course. It is an open access course, free to anyone, and you can access it through the QR code here, and it is available in the university's edX platform. We also have a number of traditional research publications, and I have put some of the more impactful ones here. You can access these on our website, but you can see two publications by our founder, Professor Rupert Wegerif, on the left. He is a leading theorist in the space of technology and dialogue, and you can see his read his thoughts here on how technology is shaping dialogue across education. And it is his writings that underscore our approach to looking at technology in education. That is enough about DEFI. Now we will take some time to explore some recent research that we've conducted and how that is helping us to reflect on the shifting attitudes around AI in higher education. So I will explore here, starting with a series of questions that I would like to ask you or have you reflect on as we begin to understand how we need to rethink education in light of what has been happening over the past 3 years. So I have here a statement. It's a summary from a leading public intellectual on an argument criticizing AI. So AI leads to forgetfulness and a false sense of knowledge. I'd like you to reflect for a moment and see if this is a statement that you agree with. Does AI lead to forgetfulness and a false sense of knowledge? Now, if we were in person, I would have an opportunity to hear your thoughts, but I will assume that some of you do feel that this is a primary risk of AI. But what I would like to demonstrate to you is I have pulled a bit of a fast one on you. And this leading public intellectual is not somebody who is living. This is Socrates, and his argument was not about AI, it was about writing. And Socrates worried that writing was leading towards a sense of forgetfulness and a loss of knowledge. And I like to start off this conversation to show that we have been here before. Education has faced major disruptions that have reshaped our understanding of pedagogy and how we need to approach the future of education. And we look at this and we can see that 2000 years ago, Socrates was worried that writing was going to fundamentally reshape education for the negative. But we can say with a fair deal of confidence that over the last 2000 years, writing has now underscored our entire pedagogy of how we approach education. I also like to use this as an introduction that AI has not led to a false sense of knowledge, that we have had students who have always exploited the easy way out and demonstrating what they think of as knowledge. So I have this fact here on the left that we often don't talk about that the industry most impacted by the advent of ChatGPT and generative AI were essay mills and contract cheating. And CHED, one of the leading essay mill organizations, saw a more than 50% drop in their business in the months following ChatGPT's release. So I'd like to say that AI doesn't lead to a false sense of knowledge. Really, it helps us to greater illustrate the fractures that were already present. And there have always been students who will exploit these systems and take the easy way out. So AI is not creating the problem. It is indeed just a part of a long series of tools that students can either use for their greater good or for a false sense of knowledge. That cognitive laziness always has predated AI, and it is as old as education itself. Within higher education and across the education spectrum, there's a temptation to approach AI as a problem of governance. And Paul mentioned this before, that we have many institutions that are trying to find ways to completely ban it from use in our schools. This is something that Cambridge is struggling with not having a fully cohesive AI policy yet, and a drive to try and return to oral-based examinations, or bringing students into a classroom to do handwritten essays. But when we treat AI as a challenge to be regulated, it overlooks the opportunities that these technologies offer to us, and a new wave of digital pedagogies that can create these things that DEFI was founded to promote: dialogue and collective intelligence and collaboration. And there are now a number of emerging models and theories which integrate AI as a co-creator of knowledge, where they become tools to support critical thinking rather than outsourcing critical thinking. But to do this, we have to have courage to shed our fears and our prejudice and approach it with an open mind, and be willing to rethink what we believe education, how it should operate, because we are witnessing a new form of consciousness, what we're now starting to see called as augmented consciousness. And by recognizing this, it allows us a space to reimagine education systems. So the first question I have for you as an audience is, what should be governed versus what should be reimagined in education? And I urge you to share some of your thoughts in the chat room. It would be fascinating to go through these after the lecture and see what you were thinking and how you are approaching these ideas. In order to put the money where my mouth is, so to speak, when I am talking about these types of issues, I like to turn to AI itself to demonstrate how it can be a tool for critical thinking. I have here a GPT developed by my colleague Simon Buckingham-Shum at the Institute of Technology at the University in Sydney. He has developed what he calls the question reframer. It is a tool to reveal the underlying assumptions in the questions that we ask. So in preparing for this address, I turned to Professor Shum's Q reframer, and I asked it, when considering the use of AI in higher education, what should be governed and regulated versus what should be reimagined? I thought it would be interesting to see what an AI tool would reveal as my underlying assumptions, and then use that to help further shape my address to all of you. We can see here the top 3 assumptions uncovered by this tool. The first, that governance and reimagination are separate or even opposing models of engagement with AI. But this is rather interesting. It does demonstrate that governance and reimagination go hand in hand. They are not polar opposites, but they are mutually beneficial aims which need to be considered together. And we see that some aspects of AI must be tightly controlled, while others can be promoted and used within our students' educational journey. We have higher education institutions are the appropriate or primary locus of both regulation and innovation around AI. Also find that fascinating. And in our research, we see that this is not consistent across the world. Sometimes the regulation is happening at the central university level. Sometimes it's happening at the college level or department level. Other areas it's happening at the national and state government level. So this is inconsistent, and I think it helps us to understand that when approaching governance, we do need to think about the larger ecosystem in which it is operating, and see how we position ourselves within that larger ecosystem. The third assumption is that AI is now a sufficiently mature or disruptive force that requires governance and reimagination. I think we can all agree that it is a disruptive force. That I don't see as anything that is debatable. But what I take from this particular statement is the word mature. It is still relatively immature. And while AI has been around in various forms for 50 years, This current disruption is only 3 years old, and we are still seeing rapid changes within generative AI and the number of modalities in which it is deployed. And while it's an unprecedented opportunity for creativity and new applications, it is still growing, and there will still be greater disruption ahead as more and more opportunities for its role in education are unveiled. But this leads us to an idea that we are in the midst of an AI reckoning. As we grapple with the implications of AI, we must consider that we are undergoing this shift from what we are now referring to as artificial intelligence to a future of intelligence augmentation. And I think this has been a future that we have been starting to live in for the past 15 to 20 years. All of us have one of these. Oh, sorry, my phone is, there we go. We have these digital tools which augment our daily lives. We turn to Google and search engines to support our ability to recall information. This has been a process of augmentation that is ongoing, but now it is reaching a greater level of sophistication and growth. I think this requires new conceptual frameworks for human intelligence and problem solving. And I have this image here that was developed by ChatGPT showing artificial intelligence as an embodied form between the ongoing debate between Plato and Aristotle in a AI-generated version of Raphael's fresco, The School of Athens. And I think this is an interesting image to think about because it does raise and capture this idea that are we facing a new form of having or new way of having to think about human intelligence? And this is an idea that is not new. It has been ongoing since the 60s with Engelbart and his writings on intelligence augmentation. But it is still a concept that is nascent to many of us, and we must address the concerns that such paradigms will lead to cognitive offloading and laziness. And that is indeed what my center has been attempting to do for the last 5 years. You can see here Engelbart's original publication on a conceptual framework for intelligence augmentation. I think it's still a fascinating read 75 years after it was first published, but I also urge you to look at other more recent publications like Ethan Mollick and his book Co-Intelligence. Professor Mollick works at the University of Wharton, and he has been a leading experimenter in how AI can be used across higher education. His book, Co-Intelligence, offers a number of really creative and innovative case studies on how he has used generative AI in his classrooms. He also has a blog, One Useful Thing, where every few weeks he publishes another case study. But my colleagues and I at Cambridge have found it to be an endless source of new ways of exploring how AI can further augment our intelligence. So in these shifting attitudes towards AI, Paul in his opening address did emphasize that there's an opportunity here, that we can see it as a virus, but if we try and quash it, it will continue to pop up. It is here to stay. So we must look for what the opportunities are and where we must balance governance with reimagination. As we move beyond intelligence augmentation, I think we have new opportunities towards collective and relational intelligence. And my center has a number of ongoing studies with colleagues around the world where we are exploring how AI can best support collective intelligence and facilitating dialogue between students. And we're beginning to see some really interesting results from this research and the tools that we are building. But it is this landscape for greater epistemic innovation. In reflecting on this address for this context, specifically thinking of the representatives we have from institutions across Sub-Saharan Africa, I did see some similarities in this emphasis on AI being able to support community dialogue and relational intelligence to Ubuntu philosophy and African epistemologies. And I believe there's an opportunity for African institutions to be a place of innovation and applications on the use of AI in classroom pedagogy. And I think this is in contrast to what is currently the dominant focus of AI on a tool for individualistic productivity and efficiency. And I mentioned earlier on that I think that is a misuse of technology in education if we keep it just focused on efficiency and individual productivity, but we have much greater opportunities when looking at applications around community and dialogue. I wonder, check if we have any questions that have come.
Yes, Godfrey,
Yeah.
could you be able to, there should be a number of questions. Godfrey, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Hmm.
Just in the Q&A, somebody was leaving, Michael was just wondering where is AI leaving the on-site research, something like that. I'll just follow here. There are some which were prompts, but many of them are student. People were just replying to registering the attendance. Yeah, no, for now, no specific questions that are cropping up. Yeah, but in the Q&A we have that question. Yeah.
Yes,
Over to you.
thank you. So, Mike, that is a really great question. My center, we run a series of workshops for students at Cambridge that we will soon be taking to a global audience through an online course looking at the impact of AI on on-site research. This is still a very hotly debated area. There are a number of tools available to support research, a number of AI tools available to support research. I think one of the more fascinating ones is called Research Rabbit, which helps with preparing literature reviews and understanding where specific literature you might be referring to, where it sits in the larger corpus of literature on that subject. But when we look at AI and research, what we are finding is there's a spectrum, and we have some tools that are clearly all right for us to use. They offer clear advantages that can help us to more efficiently and holistically understand the greater body of work that our research is sitting in, where then we have other tools that are clearly well across the line of negative academic integrity, that they're clearly unethical. The middle period is very gray, and that is up for individual institutions to decide where that cutoff is between what is right to use and what is not. I think there will always be a space for on-site research. I believe that AI does offer tools, but it's the capacity for humans to draw lateral insights and to ask questions and meaningful questions that is something that is embodied within our human nature. And that is something that we can't export to AI. And the best research is based on the best questions, and that will always be a role for humans. I see that Jeff also has a question here on assessment and Western pedagogical models and epistemologies. I will talk about that bit in this in a couple of sections when we look at assessment in particular, but some of the possibilities that we have seen that help to prevent a replication of Western pedagogical models would be individual or institution-specific AI systems. One possibility that we're beginning to see as a reality is that libraries of the future will be curators of bespoke AI systems for each university, so that librarians will begin building these AI systems that are relevant to that specific university or department. So imagine a future where you might have a student of literature coming to your university, and they will have, through the library, access to a chatbot that is curated with information provided by librarians. And in that way, it can be contextualized specific to that institution or the epistemologies that that institution finds important. I also have been working on AI models for use in rural parts of Sub-Saharan Africa. And I don't have much information on that in this presentation, but I can say that we have been training small language models on insights and knowledge from farmers across Sub-Saharan Africa. And in that way, we've been able to embody it within the knowledge systems from those local communities and not have it be something that is coming from the outside. Jeff, please contact me offline and I'm happy to talk more. And then
Yes,
here we have another question from
excuse
Jeff.
me?
Oh, yes.
There's also another question from Irene. Irene is saying, what are the detrimental effects AI could have on the creative thinking and critical thinking of users, and how can we begin to use it as well as advocate for the responsible use in a way that doesn't become too addictive, that we can not think without it?
That is a great question, Aaron. I will defer answering that because I will address some of that later in my presentation in the last section. And then Jeff had a question about governance, which I will also defer because we will be talking about that in this upcoming session. As well as Mitala has a question that I will circle back on after we review this next section on AI and governance. But those are great questions. Thank you for sending them, and please keep them coming. It makes it a bit more dynamic for all of us. But this next section, I'll take a few minutes to look at emerging policies across higher education as they look at the impact of AI. These are observations that have come from an ongoing study that my colleagues at DEFI have been conducting on AI governance and policy in higher education. We have looked at the published policies of 106 global universities, and we are developing some high-level insights around what the global or the shaping landscape is around AI policy. Here I have some of our initial discoveries at a very, very high level. Most of this policy is still relatively broad and unspecific in nature. This seems to be a response to the rapidly evolving ways in which AI is disrupting education. So many institutions are taking a more hands-off approach as they wait to further understand what the specific use cases of AI in education might be. We've also found that most AI policies place responsibility for ethical use on the students. We do think this is interesting, and I'll have more on that later. Policies also vary widely across regions, where some regions tend to focus more on institutional policy, where others will focus more on state and national policy. There are transparency gaps. Some institutions, their policies are inaccessible or hard to find, and we're not sure why this would be, but I'll go into some of the specifics here, because I think based on the questions that we had, you will find this interesting. So most institutions are still in the very early stages, Cambridge being one of them, that we have broken the guidance down into three areas: intermediate, minimal, and high, where minimal guidance would be a more hands-off policy and high guidance would be much more granular and specific. So across the 106 universities, while we understand this was not a comprehensive look, we do begin to see some trends that the majority of institutions are this intermediate or minimal guidance when looking at AI policy frameworks. It is clear that writing is the key policy battleground for AI. The impact that AI has on the future of essay writing and essays as a form of summative assessment. Prohibitions, I think not by surprise, cluster around use of academic integrity. But we are beginning to see a number of policies that are starting to focus on the educational affordances. So this is emerging. It is uneven across institutions, but we are seeing some of these policies that are now focusing on specific AI-based pedagogies in the classroom rather than trying to prohibit its use or police its use. And I think that refers back to that earlier question I asked you about regulation versus pedagogical innovation. Plagiarism and unacknowledged use do dominate the prohibition space. There are a number of policies which focus on the issues around uploading written work into an AI system, so a large language model, and the concerns around that information and writing samples becoming part of the training data, and this leading to a breach of copyright and data protection. So many institutions have explicit bans on inputting student work into AI systems, Cambridge included. And it's showing that writing support is still the most sensitive and debated area. We are seeing some institutions that are that are advocating for and approving specific LLMs that their staff can use, and that they can upload some work into those LLMs, but in general, there is a blanket ban on uploading student work into any LLM, regardless of whether or not it has been approved by the institution. I have here this graph showing some of what we have found as we looked across these 106 policies, that these are the most common prohibited use cases, ranging from using an LLM for any task unless specifically authorized. So institutions giving their staff or students specific use cases where they can use an LLM. And you can see here other ways in which it is prohibited. So using it without citing it, I think that still falls along traditional academic integrity arguments. Using an LLM to do a task that is being assessed, so passing off an LLM's work as yours for a formative or summative assessment, copyrighted work into an LLM, or passing an LLM generated text off as your own. We'll talk more about this when I get to the assessment section in a few minutes. But beyond the prohibited use, we did begin to see policies that are looking at pedagogical innovation. So 19 universities have offered AI as a tool for peer review and critical reflection. So this would be using AI to, maybe it's critiquing a presentation that you have, or a formative piece of writing to help you iteratively develop out your idea as you move towards a summative assessment, or as here 17 citing it for use in first draft or writer's block support. So it's showing some recognition of AI's creative affordances, even though it's still clearly discouraging submitting AI generated work as a final submission. When I get to my final section, we'll look at some models where professors and institutions are using AI in this way and having students submit both the prompts and the iterations they've done using a large language model to develop out ideas alongside a summative piece of writing, so that the professor can see this longitudinal gain of critical thinking as they've used an AI to develop out an idea towards a place of a summative idea. And then AI for structuring notes and outlining. I think this is a fascinating area because it is I'm seeing it emerge in special education areas, so SEND students or inclusion, where many inclusion departments are looking at the affordances of AI to help students who may struggle with dyslexia, and where AI can offer some benefits to structured note-taking and outlining. So in permitted use cases, these are some of the dominant areas that we've identified in this, this work. So as a peer reviewer, as a tool for literature review, for grammar checks, or summarizing content or explaining issues. And one of the more permitted use cases is for ideation and brainstorming. I've also found differences in who is accountable. So predominantly, the responsibility for accountable use is placed on the learner, but there are some institutions where that is shared. It's put on the students and the professors, and a few cases where it is the professor who is given responsibility for ethical use. And while this is rare, we have seen it mostly in elite US institutions like MIT and Harvard. But this emphasis on student responsibility suggests that universities are framing AI as primarily a matter of academic integrity, not institutional pedagogy. So you, as university leaders, I think this is something for you to keep in mind as your own institutions are framing AI, and not just focusing on where it can be a breach of academic integrity, but also where it can support innovative new pedagogy. And I will give you some further ideas later in this presentation. We do believe that responsibility is starting to shift to shared between students and professors. I think plagiarism will continue to dominate the discussions around AI in higher education. There are these regional differences. UK tends to be more very strict in the use of AI. Elite schools in the US have been slow to adapt. Europe has policies largely focused on legal governance and national and state AI policy. Asia has been, let's say, more flexible in looking at how AI can be used across education. But I do think we're seeing, on the whole, emerging positive use cases of AI as a learning tool, and this is beginning to be reflected in AI governance. Summarizing the arguments or this section of the presentation, and then I'll take a moment to look at any new questions that might have come in. But institutions are still struggling to develop a cohesive AI policy. Even Cambridge has, and Cambridge has left AI policies largely up to the departmental level, understanding that different departments have different pedagogical needs. And we have some departments which, like the business school, which have been very open about promoting the use of AI and are moving towards their own proprietary small language model for use by business students, to our divinity school, which is restricting the use of AI with the understanding that some of the key affordances of AI are outsourcing the core pedagogical needs of their divinity school. As you as university leaders are framing your AI policy, I encourage you to align those institutional policies with emerging national AI frameworks. And for our colleagues from African institutions, if you've not seen it, encourage you to look at the African Union AI strategy and their call for a Pan-African approach to AI governance. I was reading through that series of documents this week, and I think it was Jeff who had asked about Western epistemologies and pedagogical models that are embedded in a more local context. That is what the African Union AI strategy is calling for, and they're pulling together resources to do just that. And I have a link here that you can follow to learn more about that. So I'll pause here for a moment and see what other questions we might be able to answer before moving on and looking at assessment.
So I think I will, there is a question that somebody has asked here, the one I'm seated here with, and is saying that some policies permit disclosure, as you have indeed indicated. They permit disclosure or acknowledging use of AI in one's work. However, many people fear to acknowledge because they feel they don't know the reaction. They really don't know the reaction of the recipient of the document or something, that the artifact that you have created, where you have acknowledged use of AI. So they don't know the reactions. What will be the reaction of the person to whom I'm sending this artifact that I've created using AI? For example, if it is a grant application, somebody fears what will be the reaction of the donor or the person that's supposed to be receiving this. So in that case, what is asking, what do we do?
That is a very good question. To start, if you've used AI, I think you need to cite it, regardless of fears of what others' reaction might be. And that is, an argument based on ethical use. If we look at this grant writing example, that is a useful example. I think it's now widely accepted that people across the globe are using artificial intelligence to support on grant writing. I certainly do. We have our own DEFI large language model that we use to help with grants. It's created incredible efficiency in our ability to look for new sources of funding. I don't see that as an unethical use of AI. We cite that we are using AI to do that, but it's helping us to move things along more efficiently and also have greater consistency in our messaging. When it comes to academic policy and using this in an academic setting, that is where a clear AI policy is critical. Your students need to know what's expected of them. They should not be put in a position where they are, if they've used AI to support their writing, they shouldn't be afraid of acknowledging it. Because if they are, that's only going to encourage them to not disclose it and be in breach of academic integrity and ethical misuse. So that clear policy can prevent students from being put in that position. And I've heard a number of examples where students are very afraid of being falsely accused of using AI and going through extreme lengths to document their writing process in order to prove that they did not use AI. So a clear policy can help alleviate that unnecessary stress on our students. But yes, I think without question, if AI is being used in any writing, it needs to be acknowledged. A brief anecdote here. So summer of 2024, Ethan Mollick in his blog, One Useful Thing, did write about the use of AI for journal writing by academics. And that a number of polls are showing that academics are using AI to increase their productivity when it comes to journal articles, and that unofficially, and this, to the best of my knowledge, has not been studied in any peer-reviewed journal, but unofficially, the applications for peer-reviewed journal articles has trebled since the release of ChatGPT. So I think that gives you at least some indication of how often we as academics are using large language models to increase our written productivity. But I also find it fascinating that when I do polls in the classroom with students, almost every student thinks it is ethically all right for them to use AI when starting to write an essay, but think that their professors should not be allowed to use AI to assess that written work, which I do find fascinating and a dichotomy in understanding. But this is where clear AI policies from an institution can help to prevent any misunderstanding or misuse. Let's see what else we have here.
Dr. Martin, a question about
I think, so not sure if that was a question or an accidental microphone left off mute. I'm scanning some of these other questions here.
Maybe you may consider answering a question on how can one acknowledge the use of AI in an academic writing. Now that's really more particular. I hope you could really consider answering that. It's coming up
Yes,
with
so
many times.
yeah, in acknowledging the use in academic writing, there should be a disclosure at the beginning of if it's a journal article, it should be disclosed. If you're using AI to support your analysis of data, that should be very well documented where AI is used, what the results are, how you've implemented human in the loop processes to control for where AI, the kind of assessments and analyses that they are doing. I think a lot of this comes down to documenting how you're using it very carefully and being able to disclose that, as well as have these human in the loop controls. And when we move into the assessment section next, we will talk more about this need for human in the loop. And I think that is really key here. We cannot outsource the writing or the analysis to AI. It is a tool to help us and augment our thinking process, as we talked about earlier, intelligence augmentation, but we're not outsourcing. You as the researcher, as the person with that expertise, need to be involved at every step of the process and providing those quality controls and steering how it is used.
Okay, Dr. Martin, you've answered
Yes.
this, but I'll still pose it to you. It's coming in from Hackathon. Are there no legal or ethical implications in the use of AI in research? Are there no legal or ethical implications in the use of AI in research?
Well, certainly there are ethical implications, and both representing AI work as your own would be a clear ethical breach. I had talked about some of the tools that are available for AI in research, a tool like Research Rabbit. Research Rabbit is really helpful in its way, its ability to help you as a researcher see what other literature is relevant. Now, that was a role that was traditionally left for librarians or researchers combing through research databases. I don't think it is an ethical misuse to use a tool like that. It's saving time. It's helping you be more comprehensive and thorough in your literature review. And that way, it is a real benefit. But I've also seen some other tools where you can take that literature, you can link it up to a writing tool, and it will begin to write the literature review for you. It's taking out that human entirely. Now, I think that is an egregious ethical misuse. And while I have not heard of any precedent of a legal implication for that, certainly that's grounds for being expelled from a university or being reprimanded. It's taking us as the expert out of the process and producing something that is, frankly, it's just derivative. And I think our ability as researchers to be creative is what makes us good researchers. So going to that extreme, that is an ethical misuse. But you also asked about the legal implications. I'm not aware of any research-related legal challenges to AI. I'm sure there are some. But I think watching what's happening in Europe right now will be interesting, where universities are looking to national AI policies to frame their university policies. And you will see this connection between the legal framework and the university research framework. So I think that would be an area to keep an eye on to help further answer that question.
An interesting question coming in from Egida. Many of our students, including some journal reviewers, are using AI to reproduce the desired documents. This is affecting the academic quality. And the question is, what options do we have to reduce complete dependence on AI? What options do we have to reduce complete dependence on AI? Interesting question.
Yes, that is. And I will look at some models in the final section of this presentation where we will look at some use cases of how that's happening. But I think currently the most effective is if AI is going to be allowed as a writing tool for an assignment, that the students submit the prompts and the dialogue they had with the AI system alongside their final written work, giving you as the professor the ability to look at their evolving thought process. And in that way, AI becomes a critical assistant that can support the development of an idea, this ideation process, rather than it just being used as a tool that quickly produces a piece of written work. Because I'm really interested in how students are using that to get to a summative piece of writing. And in my time as a professor, I would often ask for essays periodically throughout a term in order to see how a student's ideas were developing. AI can provide greater support in that type of ideation. So I think when you as a professor then are making that judgment call on what the student has written, it'd be very powerful to look at that critical journey they've taken alongside that summative piece of writing and understand how their thinking develops, and are they using AI in a productive way that is supporting critical thinking.
Okay, just one more question.
Okay.
Maybe quite some coming through. How much of AI is acceptable in a research paper? That's, well, I mean, PhD thesis or master's dissertation. How much of AI is acceptable, and how do you reference? Well, probably you've answered the referencing, and maybe from your personal experience from your university, how much of AI is acceptable in a research paper?
Yes, I'm going to give you, I think, what you will find an unsatisfactory answer. I think it is context dependent on departments. I mentioned the example earlier of the business school versus the divinity school, where one is much more accepting of AI because the business school is looking at a reality where their students will be entering a workforce where it is expected that you have deep AI literacy and know how to use these tools effectively and efficiently to increase your productivity. For that reason, it is critical that they have their students adopt AI in a very deep way, versus the divinity school, where the fundamental pedagogy of a theological student is to go back to the original text and wrestle with specific meanings. And if you outsource that to AI, you are not developing the skill set that makes for a good theologian. So I can't answer that. I can only say you need to have an understanding of what's acceptable within your department and area.
Okay, last.
Just a minute. There is also a hand up. I just wanted to let you know that Professor Issa Kabenge's hand is up, and I hope Professor Robert Wamala, you can let, yeah.
Please, Issa, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is really fascinating. I posted this in the Q&A, and I think someone is going to miss it. I see other people using this differently. And I said prohibited or reimagined. A student uses an LLM to draft the first version of the report, but then picks up the sentences in there, goes to Google Scholar, and comes up with very good peer-reviewed text that can support those sentences. Would that be acceptable as a student's work? Should I be even tell the professor that this is work that originated with an AI to begin with?
Personal feeling is that would not be an accepted use of AI for developing a piece of academic writing. Frankly, it's approaching the process backwards. You are developing a piece of writing and then looking for research to back up that argument. I think that's a dangerous precedent, and we as researchers, we need to be looking at the literature, what other ideas are happening, and using that to identify what the gaps are, where there's room for creativity and novel insights. What you've just described is it's producing writing for writing's sake. Yes, I think that would be an unethical use. What you've described, the AI can make that process more efficient. The reality is some of our students have been writing like that before anyway. AI does make the ability to do that more efficient, but yes, it was a good question, but I would characterize that as unethical use. It's not the skill set. Well, it's not developing a critical thinking skill set.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have 45 minutes left. I have a lot more to cover, so we'll, I think, move on from governance, because this assessment section and the new pedagogical uses are often people find very interesting and thought-provoking. So I want to make sure we leave enough time for that. So I'm going to look at the evolving landscape of assessment and AI. Many of these insights were originally developed in a futures thinking study that my center did in partnership with Cambridge University Press in assessment. So I'll give you a bit of background on that, but we start with this question of, is assessment keeping pace? It is clear that assessing text as a proxy for human effort is losing validity. And I have here a picture that my colleagues at Cambridge like to show, where we can look at assessment models from 40 years ago and today, and there's very little change. And what I find really frightening and fascinating is it doesn't just have to be from the 1980s, it could be from the 1880s, and assessment really hasn't changed all that much. Our founder, Professor Rupert Wegerup, likes to talk about, we are moving now into a post-text academy where we have a number of different modalities for expressing ourselves in creating summative and formative work. And that this idea that written text is the pinnacle of assessment is starting to lose validity. So he describes this as an assessment integrity crisis. And in the work that we have done with Cambridge University Press and Assessment, we were wrestling with this concern that we are in this integrity crisis. I mentioned earlier the 50% drop in business from Chegga, the essay mill, after the release of ChatGPT. I think that's a great example where AI has revealed the fragility in our current assessment systems. It hasn't caused this crisis. What it has done is provided a spotlight to see where assessment is not keeping pace with the realities of what you might call transversal skills or 21st century competencies or future skills. So these traditional metrics, the scores and completion rates, risk becoming obsolete when AI can perform those academic tasks more efficiently and better. I think it starts to show that many of these systems were built not to assess what matters most, but what was easy for us to assess in learning. And we've all recognized as learners that our assessment models don't fully capture the depth of the learning process, especially those deeper transformative aspects of an education. And I think all of us as educators, that's why we become teachers. We're wanting to help change lives, help our students understand better who they are in the world. And it is very difficult to assess for that. We can assess specific learning outcomes, but those more transformative aspects have been left outside of our traditional assessment models. So with this study that we have done, we began looking at ways where assessment might be able to start capturing things like engagement, reasoning, creativity, and collaboration, so that we could get a better understanding of what the new possibilities are with AI in moving beyond just measuring specific learning outcomes. In addition to that, we are also looking at complementary technology like wearables, which might be smartwatches or VR cameras, and what possibilities might be there for more holistic assessing of our students. So instead of seeing AI as a threat to assessment, I think it's more important to for us to ask, how can it help us build assessments that reflect the things we say that we care about as educators? And what do we care about? It's a really important question for us to ask. I have a study here from the University of Reading where researchers created 33 fictitious students using ChatGPT to generate answers to a psychology exam. Students' results, these essays were virtually undetectable by the examiners, with 94% not raising concerns with the exam markers. And I have sat in a room with experts in technology where we were given sample pieces of writing, one done by AI and one done by a living student, and asked to determine which one was the AI written work. And at best, we were 50-50, no better than guessing. And we can see now other AI performing assessments on MBA exams that is performing higher than the average student. It can pass the UK bar exam, GPT-4 scoring on very strong results on the SAT reading and writing, or the advanced placement biology, chemistry, and psychology exams. So when the AI systems can perform better at this kind of recall, it does force us into asking, if it can do better on these assessments than most humans, then do we need to rethink assessment? And the next step is, do we need to rethink what we are teaching? That's a question I can't fully answer. That's for all of us to work through, but we should do it in community as we try and think through this. But it is a critical question for us to ask, especially as it applies to assessment, because I believe that where assessment goes, the rest of education follows. And if we can begin to reimagine assessment for this new world of AI, the rest of education will be able to better conform or fall into line or engage with these new possibilities. With those higher level thoughts, I'm going to now go through two sections here, what I call assessment 1.0, which is happening now, and then assessment 2.0, where we see this happening. I did a version of this presentation 8 months ago for the Ministry of Education in New Brunswick. When I was preparing this presentation for today, it was fascinating that I had to take some of the use cases that I put in assessment 2.0 and move them to today, because even in that 8-month timeline, we're already seeing this shift very quickly to new possibilities happening, or what had been seen as new possibilities now starting to be our current reality. So if we look at the assessment landscape now and how it is responding to AI, we have 4 key areas. Automated grading and feedback. We've long used technology to support that, especially with multiple choice or digital-based exams. We are beginning to see more AI-driven adaptive testing, and I have some examples here. Personalized systems have become all the buzzword in the past couple of years, and these personalized AI tutors and personalized AI assessments. And then the final one is AI for detecting cheating and ensuring test integrity, and AI to try and capture AI written work. I'm going to pause for a moment and say that I don't believe AI cheating detection systems are effective at all. And we've seen many enterprises try and promote AI cheating detection systems. I think they're good at detecting a certain type of writing and a certain style, but not at detecting AI written work. And I mentioned some of these rooms I've sat in where even AI experts cannot determine what was AI written and what was student written. It's too easy to manipulate the system. So do not rely on those AI detection platforms. Here are some examples now of where AI is supporting automated grading and scoring. So OECD has demonstrated AI scoring on the multilingual PISA reading and science test, and that they're showing that these AI graded systems were highly consistent with the human scoring. And you can see here a link to the journal article that they published assessing these the two approaches. That the NAEP are using transformer models. So BERT, an early AI system to grade written student responses, and that they are continuing to improve and train these systems to provide summative feedback to student writing. And I think this is a debated area. Many institutions have banned professors from using AI to provide summative assessment, but you can look here at the work that the NAEP is doing on using transformer models to grade written essays. And then TIMS, which is a math assessment, is using AI to look at student-drawn diagrams for science and math problems, and that these AI systems that are assessing these handwritten diagrams are within 91 and 98% agreement with human expert scores. So these systems are improving. Even this particular study was 2023. We have a research article here from 2021. We know that the accuracy of these systems is improving as the data sets for training are expanding and being further refined. But you can read more about that through those journal articles. Automated grading and scoring is seeing a greater increase in that for assessment. Human in the loop is still critical when it comes to automated grading and scoring. So some systems are using humans to look at the outliers, either the work that is considered poor or highly excellent, and using AI to look at the middle of the distribution. That AI can flag the anomalies for human reviewers. They can also support greater and faster feedback cycles, consistency, and scaling. And that's where you see these personalized systems becoming really relevant, where a student can enter in potential responses to a question and get real-time written feedback. So my eldest son, who just finished his GCSE exams last year, in preparing for those exams, his school was encouraging their students to write mock GCSE exams in their own time and use AI to assess and score those exams so they could get additional practice in addition to the work that their teachers were assessing. These systems are best used with rubrics and validated examples. That goes without saying. There's lots of research going into how you validate these examples. But they do support faster feedback and consistency at scale when used effectively with humans in the loop and validated rubrics and scales. This is a diagram and framework developed by my colleague Ingin Molinar on how and where humans are to be integrated into these AI systems across different areas. And you can read more about her work from the link below, and I'm happy to make these slides available to you through the presenters so you can follow up on these published journal articles. I was meeting with some colleagues at PISA a couple of weeks ago in Montreal and was able to learn more about this particular experiment, where PISA this year is running a pilot study on using AI to assess critical thinking. So they're analyzing a solution, the process that students are following for looking at a specific a question focused on measuring critical thinking and analysis. In addition, this trial will be pioneering the use of an AI-powered chatbot as a learning aid during the PISA exam, where it can ask basic questions. So that the assessment can better focus and evaluate higher order reasoning and problem solving. My colleagues at OECD are also starting to explore the development of large language models for use in education that are outside the models being developed by big tech industries, but will be proprietary to different governments or institutions to help make these systems more context specific to the areas in which they are operating. We mentioned TIMS earlier. Here again, we have the TIMS test introducing a multi-stage adaptive design to better match test difficulty to student populations. So this is taking the computer adaptive testing, but using AI to create greater nuance and effectiveness at matching student ability to the difficulty of questions. And then formative e-portfolios. I find this one really exciting because this was an area that we had identified as assessment 2.0, something that would be in the future, which has now moved to present day. And my colleagues and I at DEFI, as we began to work with stakeholders around the world on reimagining assessment, a consistent theme was the need for a greater focus on formative assessment. We're more interested in the journey, because that is where the journey students take to get to understanding, because that is what reveals their critical thinking ability and process. And one solution that came out of that reimagining was the emergence of e-portfolios, where you could look longitudinally at a student's corpus of work over their academic and even professional career to see how thinking had evolved across certain domains. And that an e-portfolio would be a venue for that. We'd like to think of it as a, say, LinkedIn, but specific to academic learning outcomes. PebblePad, and I'm not promoting PebblePad, but they are an e-portfolio provider that is starting to provide that kind of service. And we have other e-portfolio providers emerging to fill this space. But I think it is interesting because it's giving us the ability to start to document these small competencies that can be linked to other learning pathways and a mastery of those competencies beyond the higher order learning outcomes, but for these higher order critical thinking skills, and that these can become portable records of a student's achievement. Now we'll take a few minutes and look at assessment 2.0, some of these emerging affordances and possibilities. Some of these are theoretical and some will be trials and pilots that are being used at different universities around the world. To learn more about our thinking and how we developed our framework for looking at the future of assessment, you can follow the link here to our Futures of Assessment report, which is available on our website. Due to time, I will move through some of the methodology comments I was going to make on how we develop this. But in summary, we use this as a chance with Cambridge University Press and Assessment to redefine assessment towards creativity, collaboration, and contextual problem solving, taking seriously that question that how do we assess what matters to us versus what is easy to assess? And so I just mentioned with the e-portfolios, the shift towards formative feedback. And I want to emphasize this, that there are a number of opportunities that AI affords to us for more formative-based forms of feedback. So we now, using AI, have colleagues who are able to record student dialogue in a classroom and code that dialogue in real time, assess it against validated frameworks, and get an indication of the quality of that dialogue. Or we can use multimodal data, so data from either recorded work or from wearables or from headsets in specific settings to create further sources of data that allow us to get a better sense of what's happening with our students and where they are going across some of these higher order thinking skills like collaboration and critical thinking. And I'll show you some specific test examples of that happening. In the flow assessment, this is a new this is a model here from MIT where they've developed a game-based a program called Newton's Playground, but in students engaging with this game, it is measuring creativity, problem solving, persistence, and collaboration. So what we call these 21st century skills, but it's doing it in what they call stealth assessment. The students are unaware that it is happening. that while it is going on. So I think this is a fascinating future use of how it is happening. Here, I mentioned earlier the ability to analyze talk, so written talk. So this is a study from UC Boulder where students are able to, just a moment, it's able to record student dialogue and then what they call talk moves, look at how students are rephrasing or inviting different perspectives in their discussion. And it's giving them a chance to generate, for professors and the teachers to have real-time feedback illuminating patterns of participation. My colleagues here at Cambridge, we're keeping an eye on this project because it's very similar to work that we are also doing, looking at how we assess collaboration. This is a study done by some colleagues of mine at Cambridge University Press, an assessment a few years ago looking at collaboration. But we are using that to see how can we further assess and monitor dialogue, and that understanding that as we teach for better dialogue, we can also teach for better critical thinking and oracy skills, some of these fundamental tenets of what it means to be able to operate in a world with changing needs and skills. So here, this is a study that's being conducted by one of our recent doctoral students, Yu Song, in China, where she has pioneered the development of a platform that is capturing video and audio of classroom participation, using AI to code that dialogue with a validated framework, and then providing an interface, a visual interface for teachers to look at and be able to make indication of how the quality of the dialogue that is happening between students and provide further scaffolding to support them. I have here an example of where multimodal learning analytics can be useful. We're seeing a lot of this happening in clinical medical environments with training of new clinicians. So here, this is an example for medics in an emergency room setting, nursing students, and they're using sensing and artificial intelligence algorithms to collect data on the learning, what were their clinical abilities as they here are working through role-based scenarios of a patient interacting with the nursing student. Multimodal learning analytics. We're doing increasing work in this space with my colleague, Brian Maddox, who's the head of our Futures of Assessment work, where looking at further possibilities for integrating, say, clicks or text or audio and video and other sensor data into building it out into constructs that are capturing collaboration, confusion, or cognitive load. It goes without saying that it requires strong ethics and privacy controls because it is collecting more and more data on our students, but it does provide a wider lens on the learning process. And we are doing work in this area on wearables. And in the new year, we'll be conducting some workshops on wearable technology. And if you're interested in participating in that, please contact me afterwards and I can give you more information. Here, another study on ER students using immersive, interactive, and augmented technology to demonstrate applied skills in interactive environments. And I have a colleague here at Cambridge, Dr. Rika Hoffman, who is doing some very exciting work in this space. And I can send you some of her work afterwards too, if you are interested. But I have a link to a study here where virtual reality is being used to train emergency medical technicians in working with students in augmented but yet safe environments. And I just mentioned our work on wearables. This expands from just VR headsets, but can be glasses, smartwatches, shirts, heart rate monitors, smart rings, bracelets. And we have been talking to some schools in different parts of the world who are looking at how they can use wearable technology that their students have and bringing that into the assessment ecosystem, to look at the impact of non-academic variables like sleep or nutrition or exercise and the impact that has on academic performance. I understand that that is a very controversial area, and happy to talk more about it, but it is, I wanted to highlight that there are new models emerging that are looking at that. So this is a shifting landscape. It is shifting very quickly. We as educators have the ability to create the future that we want, but I do encourage all of you to start thinking creatively and critically about how assessment needs to work in your context to create what these new futures of assessment should be, that we are all actors in setting and maintaining these assessment standards, but it is up to us to actively shape them. Let's see how we're doing on time. Maybe we can take just one question on assessment, and then I can go into some digital pedagogies, and then we will wrap up.
Thank you very much, Professor Paul Muinda. Maybe before you come in, Prof. Muinda, you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Allow me just mention this before we get into the questions. That on the call, we also have the chairperson of Makerere University Council, Dr. Rona Magara, was attending this particular session. We are honored for her presence on this very important cause. Also, I think you should also have mentioned that we also have Dr. Jeff Borders, the CEO of Astra Learning, on this particular call. So back to you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much. And indeed, I want to welcome our chairperson to council, Ms. Lona Magara, and Jeff. Thank you very much for being part of this conversation. Yes, on assessment, I think assessment, you have indeed indicated that assessment has not changed since education started, and it has been predominantly text-based. And you are trying to say we should be able to assess other forms of engagements that we learners will always have. And indeed, to me, I think that if we know the purpose of education, why do people go to school? I think then we will be able to think about other ways we can be able to provide education to learners. I think in my conviction, I think that we go to school to learn. The purpose of going to school is to learn at different levels, whether at kindergarten level, whether it's primary level or university level. And if all educators could preoccupy themselves with that particular question or that particular issue that we go to school to learn, then we can be able to rethink how we can be able to cause learning. And to me, I am seeing that the role of us as teachers has now to change to be, we have to be designers of learning. We have to be designers of learning, and therefore we have to change the way we design instruction to actually designing learning and focusing on designing those activities that can cause learning in the presence of artificial intelligence. So because artificial intelligence is here with us, so how do we get the learners to use artificial intelligence to be able to learn? I think for me, that is the critical question or critical issue that we as educators need to really be able to think through at the moment. And so your proposition of looking at issues, looking at things like the e-portfolios or assessing the journey of learning, I think that's very, very critical. How do we assess the journey of learning? And for me, I've been using this approach. If we have some of my master's students here, especially the Masters of Instruction Design and Technology, they will be able to tell you that in my work that I do with them, I assess how they are learning, and I preoccupy myself with that, other than preoccupying myself with with summative assessments. And I've also gone away from assessment using text to assessment using other methods like engagements, interaction, the artifacts that have been created, claims for learning outcomes. How can you be able to claim that you really have this particular learning outcome, interactions, and that dialogic approach to teaching and learning. But I can leave it to other members on the forum to be able to also share in their approaches, and also maybe give us comments or questions that our presenter here can be able to guide us. So I will hand over to the participants, and to you, Godfrey. I think you have a number of questions in the Q&A that you may be able to prioritize and give to our participants or our presenter to be able to really discuss with us. Over to you, Godfrey.
Prof,
Are you still there?
Thank you. Thank you. But I think Kevin Martin had suggested that we only give one question on assessment so that he can be able to complete the presentation since time is running out.
But I know that, Godfrey, I know that we were very instrumental in trying to change assessment at Makerere, especially during the COVID-19 time. And some of these issues that we are discussing now, though we are discussing them in the realm of artificial intelligence, we found some of these issues. And so, Godfrey, probably you could have some more insights into how we struggled.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Muinda. For sure, we struggled, and most especially when it came to using of technology and changing from the traditional ways of teaching to the new ways of teaching. And it was not very easy, and many people were not in agreement, in acceptance of going into those era. But that was the time when we had the COVID around, and we were forced to be able to run exams. And at that point, we did a lot of issues of capacity building, and we used open book exams, we used quizzes, we used, but there were also technological challenges that we gained along the way when we were doing these kinds of assessment. But there was also people who used claims, e-portfolios, and things of that kind. But we were able to go through it, and we were able to achieve all through it. And right now, actually, we are writing a paper on the reflection and lessons learned in that era, though it's not directly into AI, but it's connected with the post-digital and the majority world, like to do reflections into the assessments that we had under the COVID, and what can we do to improve on the processes. And there's a lot of connections with what you are actually talking, even if it's in AI, but it has a lot of connections, and there's a lot of learning that we are getting out of this. Over to you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. You will agree that actually the disruptions are there, and we only have to think about new models. And now I see that Martin has now is going to get to the new affordances or new pedagogical models that we could be able to think about to implement within our context. But so I want to hand over the microphone to our presenter. Over to you.
Thank you, Paul. I will run through this and show you some of the ones that I think are most exciting, and including a few that we're working on here at our center. But Paul, you had mentioned this, why students receive an education, what is learning for? And you talked about both the development of skills and knowledge, as well as the relationships, and both are critical. But I think if I had the opportunity to ask all of you to take a moment and reflect on your own personal educational journeys, what would you say was the most impactful part of your education? Almost always, when I ask this question, what people respond with is that one relationship they had, or a series of relationships that helped to shape them who they are. Maybe it was the teacher who saw something in you that you didn't quite see yet and gave you the confidence to push yourself and try, or the group of friends that you made that helped to shape your outlook on the world. I don't think, when I'm asking this question, I've ever had anyone say it was because of a test I took or an exam I studied for. That doesn't mean it isn't important, but these skills and knowledge are still important for us to develop at school. But we also have to recognize that the relational aspect is just as important as those development of skills and knowledge. And I thought of two examples when you were talking that are a good lead off for this final section. But I'm just going to move along here. But that you that demonstrate this balance between skills, knowledge, and relationship. One is Alpha Schools. It's a new project. They are in the US. They're growing very quickly, but in the Alpha Schools, students are spending the morning with a personalized AI tutor, developing the specific knowledge and skill sets, and then the afternoons in groups of other students working through problems together. So building the higher order critical thinking and collaboration skills. And then Minerva, which is a university where students are together in cohorts, so physical cohorts with their students, but they're taking all of their studies online with professors around the world. And every term they move to a different part of the world with their cohort. So they might have a term that's in San Francisco and then a term that's in London, moving around with that group of students, building the relationship, but doing their actual academic work online. I'll move through this somewhat quickly because of timing, but a point I wanted to make is when we look at intelligence augmentation, we are seeing mixed results on the recent studies that have come out looking at things like personalized AI tutors, where we have some that are looking at very negative effects. So your brain on ChatGPT, that was a very recent study from MIT, versus positive impacts on higher order thinking skills. When we look at these different studies, what we think the difference is the pedagogy. It's not the technology, it's how you are designing the technology for use in the classroom. And it's moving beyond a concept of AI literacy to AI pedagogy. And that is where a school like Alpha or Minerva become interesting because it's very much focused on the pedagogical implications of AI. One example of this, which I have been watching closely, is a World Bank project in Edo State, Nigeria, where this is not yet peer-reviewed published research. This is taken from a blog, but they showed that when a personalized AI tutor was being paired with classroom teaching, they were getting 2 years of learning outcomes in 6 weeks compared to other interventions and compared to the control group. That is incredibly promising and something to keep an eye on, but it emphasizes that the focus should be on the pedagogy, not on the technology. What should it do, not what can it do? And intelligent tutoring systems have become what the focus has been the last few years, these personalized AI tutors. There are dozens and dozens of them. Even in weeks after the release of ChatGPT to the public, saw AI tutoring systems based on ChatGPT being released. I built one for my son. They're very easy to do. They are everywhere. This is a study by my colleague Wayne Holmes at UCL looking at the state of these personalized AI tutoring systems. I want to acknowledge them because they are so prevalent, but I think it is just the beginning of these pedagogical possibilities for AI in education. And I think personally, this is my personal view, that we will see a reimagining of academic disciplines, that the boundary between disciplines will begin to erode as there is more of a shift on what are the variety of skill sets required to solve problems or think through challenges or opportunities creatively. And that lateral thinking will be the foundation of future university higher education. And there is a new degree program here at Cambridge that is doing just that. Leverhulme Center for the Future of Intelligence, where you have students who are coming in and they are not taking courses just in, say, psychology or engineering. It is a multidisciplinary set of coursework to support them and looking at specific global challenges, so they're able to get the perspectives they need to tackle that. The Stanford D School is another good example of this kind of lateral thinking, where students are not looking at one particular narrow area, but a much broader academic ecosystem in order to understand how different areas work. I mentioned this. So as we come into the final few minutes, those were some high-level thoughts, but now I'll look at a couple of specific examples because some of you asked about this. But academic writing and critical thinking has come up over and over in this discussion. Here, this is talking about how summative essays can be submitted alongside a record of students' interactions with AI, so that you can see the prompts, edits, questions, that iterative process they followed, and understand the critical thinking path in order to reach that summative work that they developed, and as well as see to what extent is the written work actually the product of AI versus what the students were doing. We're also, this is a recent article from about a month ago in Harvard Business Review on the generative AI and the human skills paradox, looking at specific professions that are being highly impacted by AI, like law or coding, where generative AI, as it's being further adopted in the workplace, many of these, what we thought of as hard skills, are being replaced, and soft skills like problem solving, creativity, and collaboration are becoming more essential. And that higher education institutions need to shift their curricula to start providing more emphasis on these soft skills in order to better prepare our students for not just the workplaces of tomorrow, but indeed the workplaces of today. This is a partner we have, Yeltic, who develop immersive learning technologies. They're doing really exciting work on how we can push the limits of augmented environments to better support learning. And I just mentioned that human skills paradox and the focus on soft skills. We are doing a project with Yeltic where they have developed an AI avatar, and you as a student or manager, so this is specific for middle managers who are having to navigate difficult conversations with employees, but you go through a training on how to de-escalate aggressive conversations, and then you enter into an augmented workplace with an avatar, and you enter into a dialogue, work to de-escalate the conversation, and then you're provided real-time feedback against the frameworks that you were trained on before entering into the augmented environment. It's a little sliding scale where you can change how aggressive it is, but it's showing how we can use these augmented workspaces to develop these soft skills. We at Cambridge, in partnership with Smart Learning, are developing an AI dialogue moderator for higher education environments. This is for asynchronous chat room environments where we can train the AI moderator to engage the students in a dialogue and further facilitate them. The professor gets a summary at the end of both what was discussed as well as what the quality of the dialogue was. And we have a PhD student who's running an ongoing study further developing these systems. The most current iteration will be moving into a multi-agentic platform for even greater nuance and support. Here, this is a project that's very dear to my heart. It's using a generative AI chatbot deployed through WhatsApp for education systems, or for education for smallholder farmers across East Africa and Southern India. This is trained on academic material and learning outcomes collected from farmers. So it provides specific context-based knowledge to environments in East Africa and available in multiple languages. You can see here it is in Kenyan Swahili. It can be narrated, and we're further expanding this system and recently launched a USSD platform based on a similar principle, but even more widely accessible across low resource environments. I think that you as university heads across the world in Sub-Saharan Africa have the opportunity for further innovations as you look at your own context-specific environments where maybe different access to electricity, internet, or computing resources will shape your pedagogical models. And the importance of integrating local languages and histories and data. And Paul had asked about that earlier. And I have been interacting with a group of linguists who are trying to document tribal languages across the region to power large language models to further support these nuanced and context-specific AI systems for learning. That is about all I have for you. I want to conclude by saying I've done a lot of talking today. I don't have the answers. My team at Cambridge, we're not AI experts. We're really good at throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks and being creative. I think that is what's required for us to think through these new possibilities, is for all of us to work together, experiment, be creative, find new solutions, and being open about what we're learning, what's failing, and iteratively working towards potential possibilities and solutions together. So with that in mind, I encourage you to join my colleagues and I at DEFI. Please you can follow this link to join our mailing list. We can continue the conversation, participate in other workshops or talks, and I would love to carry the conversation forward. But thank you. It looks like even a few hundred of you stuck on for the full 2 hours, which is very impressive. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. If you have any specific questions you would like to ask, please feel free to follow up with me, and I can put my email in the chat.
Wow.
Prof Muinda.
Yes.
Prof Muinda.
Hello.
I see Grace's hand has been up for a long time, and Kakinda. I don't know if you will allow them to speak a little bit.
Yes, we will allow some few, maybe 3 people to speak, and then because the time is not on our side. Who is that one now?
Professor Grace
Grace?
Chomendo. Yeah, is there.
Hello, Grace, can you speak? Or maybe
No,
the next
actually,
one?
actually, hello. The hand went up when I was just observing, but I just want to thank the presenter. I think he has raised quite a number of issues, and my thinking has been around the assessment mode, and I think for me, as we're starting a new university, we just need to read more about and understand more about this. And see how we can't be left behind. We have to find a way of using AI positively, but also researching in our own context. But thank you so much. Actually, I've learned a lot.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Yes,
at what stage are you starting? I think Grace, you have a very, very huge task. Are you starting with the old model? Are you starting with the new model? University 5.0, University 1.0? Which university are you setting up? Okay, the next person.
We are still debating.
Prof Muinda Mkanas is.
Yes, Prof Muinda, yes.
Maybe meanwhile, we can start with Simon Peter Wabwire. As Prof Muinda, yeah.
Thank you so much this is Simon Peter Wabwire. Makerere University is a PhD student under College of Education and External Studies, East African School of Higher Education Studies and Development. And I'm also undertaking research under digital transformation in higher education. That's my area of interest. I would like to say something about AI, and I thank the presenter and all people who have contributed towards this training or session. My input is that we needed to find ways of adopting AI as fast as we can in our higher education institutions, because AI has been in place in other forms, only that we had not realized that that was AI. I can give an example of 2004 when we did Cisco. We have been talking about assessments. We used to do Cisco, and actually Cisco is still a course, and other certification programs, and the assessment or the exam is done online, and grades are sent automatically after the last submission of your question, or the final question, or the final attempt. So AI has been on. And that part that is very challenging, the ethical part of it, where we feel students are likely to copy or to use other material without referencing it, is where we need to sit and agree which principles, which policies should align and support the back end of teaching and also assessment. Because if we look at only assessment and forget the teaching or the learning part of the whole entire program, then we shall we shall have a wrong assessment. So my request is that we give another opportunity for maybe a conference, an engagement, a discussion on how fast AI can be integrated into our teaching, our learning, our assessment, and maybe even other components of management. But AI has been in place for a very long time.
Thank you.
That's my input. Thank you so
very
much.
Godfrey, do you have one more person only?
Hello, can
Yeah.
I go?
Prof.
Can I go now?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, DVC Emeritus.
Yeah,
Go.
thank you very much. This has been an enriching presentation. The mere fact that you are calling it artificial, it means it is mimicking human intelligence. It's not human intelligence. That being the case, I like it when Martin says that it will clearly shape our best learning outcomes by improving student engagement and all those enhanced academic achievements. However, my worry remains the same. That, the fear, I don't know whether it is an African fear or it is a global fear, that by Euro standards, definitely, ultimately, it will impair, it will diminish that critical thinking, it will diminish problem solving and human ingenuity in a way, to the extent that we want it's an enabler. It will improve efficiency, precision, and also time saving. But what is it doing to the human intelligence? Don't you think ultimately it will diminish the critical thinking in some way, and also lead to rote learning? I've already put it in the chat. Over-reliance will lead to rote learning, which we are trying to fight all along as the teachers and as experts in pedagogy.
Okay, that is a comment. I don't know whether Martin has some response to that.
Yes, it's a concern that is shared globally. What will this impact be on human intelligence? I'm worried too, frankly. I think there are incredible possibilities and potential for AI to further support what we described it as intelligence augmentation, that it can give us the ability to dialogue with the corpus of human learning. And there's something profound about that. It's a way of interacting with knowledge that is unprecedented. And if we, as individuals, are willing to engage with it at a level where it helps us to think better and think more critically and expand possibility, then it will positively support human intelligence. But the reality is not everybody will use it that way. I don't use it that way all the time. Sometimes I need to be moving fast and I'm going for the quick analysis so that I can get the information I need and move on. But it requires discipline and commitment, not just from us as researchers, but as individuals, that we are willing to engage with these systems to support our own critical thinking. And when we look at our students, it will be the same individual responsibility for them. I have, long before generative AI was easily accessible, I had students who would take the easiest possible way out towards an assignment or critical thinking. Part of my job as a professor was to identify that, call them out on that, and push them. That's not changing. That's been around forever. It will continue to be around with generative AI.
In Makerere, they include me also.
Yes, so it will be down to the individual choice of our students, and not all of them will always use it to support critical thinking, but I am optimistic that many of them will do that. And some of what we have to face in the future, these are things that AI won't be able to do. AI can help, but it will require creative, talented people who are willing to ask difficult questions and think across disciplines. That's what will be required. And that I do not think AI can take away from us.
I think, colleagues, you'll agree that Kevin has been able to really engage us and stimulate our minds in this field, especially the field of digital education or digital pedagogy. We are all thrilled and we are enthusiastic to see how best we can be able to leverage on AI for our work, our teaching and learning, research, and so on. And so the conversation and the debate starts. We need to continue actually doing much more research, doing much more thinking to see how best we can be able to leverage on this. But I can say that as Makerere University, I think we're on the right path because since the academic registrar is here, Professor Mukada Sibuyinza, you will know that the policy that Makerere University is adopting of 60%, 40% is trying to address these challenges because you are trying now to give more weight to the learning process. So the learning process, therefore, will involve rewarding, for example, those dialogic methods and the interaction the students have, and not only the written examinations, but the learning process. So how I wish all the faculty members at Makerere can be able now to, as IODEL, of course, we are going to come in to train our colleagues on how to be able to reward the learning process and what is the learning process that they should be looking at in order for them to attain that 60%. And the 40% which you are giving as the summative assessment then will be in the usual exams, but the 60% will be now looking at these new approaches to teaching and learning. I think we're also on the right footing because, as Kevin said, it is about pedagogy and not about technology. And Makerere University long realized this when they established the Institute of Open Distance and E-Learning to support in the pedagogical aspect to digital pedagogy. Because previously e-learning had been bundled together with the ICT function of the university, and it was not working out well. But when Makerere realized that digital pedagogy is a separate thing from the technology, then they disbanded these two units and created the Institute of Open Distance and E-Learning to foster the digital pedagogy, as DICTS is fostering the technology. So these two institutions are actually moving on to really complement and augment each other. So I think we are moving in that right direction. But also, yesterday we signed an MOU between Makerere University and Astria Learning to further create that partnership that can be able to foment our our advancement into AI-powered teaching and learning and AI pedagogy. So those are all right moves that Makerere University is taking, and I want to thank Asti Learning, and I want to thank Kevin for this wonderful work that you have done for us. How I wish all members can be able to clap for Kevin for the wonderful job that he has done. But if Dr. Robert Wamala is still around, I would want to request Dr. Robert Wamala to give some closing remark to this session and then tell us what next. I really want to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this Arua conference, and to thank the university management for having lobbied to have this conference at Makerere University, where it has been able to, where many people have been able to be involved. If it was in another country, we would not have many people involved, especially from our country, from Makerere University. Thank you very much. And thank you, Kevin, for allowing to really spend 2 solid hours on this presentation. This is quite resilient. Yeah. And
it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I wish I was with all of you at Makerere University. But next time.
Yeah, just accept that we will continue interacting with you and getting more insights so that we can see how we can further collaborate on this emerging and this emerging and very interesting conversation. Over to you, Godfrey. Session.
Okay, thank you. Then I think we can close. We are very happy. We kept time very well. I know the timing at your side is different from ours, but we have really enjoyed the conversation, and we are hoping to continue in touch in terms of this area, which we are really looking forward to learning more and learning from one another. There are a lot of questions and no specific answers, but we are going to move into there through design thinking and seeing how to get possible solutions there. Thank you very much. And thank you, Prof. Muinda and Jeff and Prof. Wamala. I am now going to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a
Bye-bye.
Yeah.